An overview of person-centered therapy and history of the Rogerian approach. So this lesson is part of our introduction to person-centered counselling approach. The objective is to discuss the influences of the humanistic approach, the history of the humanistic approach, Rogerian and Maslow theories, Rogerian approach, counselling skills, and person-centered therapy. Carl Rogers was born in 1902 and is considered the most influential American, or one of the most influential American psychologists of the 20th century. His theory is humanistic, and he was a founder of person-centered or client-centered approach to psychotherapy. The emphasis of his work was on the uniqueness of human growth, potential, and capacity for choice. Rogers became the first president of the American Academy of Psychotherapists in 1956. He had a long career teaching and developing the person-centered approach, spending his final years developing or delivering workshops all over the world. Rogers passed away in 1987. Abraham Harold Maslow was born in 1908. He was an American psychologist, best known for creating Maslow's hierarchy of needs. He had his own ideas and understanding the human mind and focused his studies on mentally healthy individuals. Finding humanistic psychology, Maslow continued to emphasize his work on the positive potential of human beings. In 1967, he was named Humanist of the Year. Maslow passed away in 1970. The humanistic approach history relates to an approach which looks at the whole person and uniqueness of everyone individually. Humanistic theories evolved from Carl Rogers' person-centered approach and Abraham Maslow's human hierarchy of needs. The humanistic approach was developed through the mid-20th century, focusing on personal worth, human values, and free will, when helping another overcome hardship, pain, and despair. So the humanistic approach from Rogers is non-directive therapy, client-centered therapy, person-centered therapy. The first evidence of the client-centered approach was published in 1941 at the Ohio State University using therapeutic recordings of Carl Rogers and his clients. They used transcripts to devise measuring systems of how directive and non-directive a counselor was. The attitude of the counselor were deemed essential to the decisions made by the client, which evidenced the effectivity of non-directive therapeutic approach. The humanistic approach, Maslow, is one of the most well-known aspects of his theories. Human needs are generally fluid, so they may need more than one thing at a time. Having worked through all the levels of the needs, a human may eventually reach self-actualization. Maslow stated, though, that self-actualization was not an automatic outcome of reaching all the needs. Self-actualization is when a human achieves the fullest of their potential. So the needs were, first level, physiological needs. For example, air, water, food, shelter, clothing, reproduction. Second, safety needs, personal security, employment, resources, health, prosperity. Then you had love and belongingness, friendship, intimacy, family, sense of connection. Then you had esteem, which relates to respect, self-esteem, status, recognition, strength, freedom. And then finally had self-actualization, desire to become the most that one can be. So the humanistic approach to Rogerian theory, in developing his theories, he agreed with the main assumption of Abraham Maslow, however expanded these concepts with his theory of personality. which is part of the humanistic approach, states that the self is broken into three concepts: self-worth, self-image, and self-ideal. Believing that if a client experienced the three core conditions of the 6 necessary and sufficient conditions, they could reach self-actualization. So Carl Rogers' personality theory. Carl Rogers believed that everyone could reach self-actualization given the right environment. Rogers' theory of personality was developed. The self-worth, the self-image, and the ideal self, and the 6 necessary and sufficient conditions. Rogers' theory of personality involved the organismic valuing process, being true to oneself, being able to make judgments and decisions based on own desires, not seeking approval for others. Internalized evaluation, externalized evaluation would be the opposite. The need for positive regard, a need for positive response from others within one's life. This may be parents, teachers, friends. Conditions of worth. Conditions we believe we must be met for acceptance, worth, and love. Positive regard from others. For example, if you rewarded for doing one thing, so it could be if you clean your room, you can have a treat. Unconditional positive regard, basic acceptance and support of another, regardless of the actions, non-judgmental care for another, positive regard without precautions. Fully functioning person, being in touch with one's deepest feelings and desires, understanding own emotions and trust in their own instincts. Incongruent person, a person's experience is unacceptable to them. It is denied and is distorted within their self-image. So the self-image incongruent involves the self-image, the ideal self. The self-image is different to the ideal self. There is only a little overlap. So that would be difficult for self-actualization. The congruent self, the self-image, is similar to the ideal self. There is more overlap. This person has the potential, well, more potential to actualize. The Rogers core conditions, the 3 conditions derived from the 6 necessary and sufficient conditions, conditions 3, 4, and 5, are empathy, unconditional regard, and congruence. These are described as the basic attitudes that a counselor displays to show acceptance of the client and valuing client's worth. And just take a moment to think about empathy, what you think is meant by empathy, what you think is meant by unconditional positive regard, and what you think is meant by congruent. Person-centred counselling skills, referring to the core conditions. What do you think is important in a counselling or psychotherapy session? Importance of relationship, verbal contact, non-verbal contact, active listening, reflection, honesty, respect, eye contact, summarizing, use of silence. What do you think is important? Referring to the core conditions, what skills do you think are important from the ones just discussed? And take a moment to think about these 2 quotes by Rogers and what you think their meaning are. So Rogers suggested that it is the client who knows what hurts, what directions to go, what problems are crucial, what experiences have been deeply buried. It began to occur to me that unless I had a need to demonstrate my own cleverness and learning, I would do better to rely upon the client for the direction of movement in the process, according to Carl Rogers. So take some time to sort of process that and think, what do you think is meant by that? Carl Rogers also suggested, in my early professional years, I was asking the question, how can I treat or cure or change this person? Now I would phrase the question in this way: how can I provide a relationship which this person may use for his own personal growth? And just take a moment to think about what that means.